Can you talk to me about immigration? What is going on in Argentina? What is going on in Holland? What is going on? We've got these libertarians taking the helm, getting rid of entire government agencies, which
Well, talking about it anyway.
yeah, it sounds great until you realize, like, I don't know if you ever read The Fifth Risk by the hell was his name? The guy who wrote Liar's Poker, and he wrote The Big Short, Michael Lewis.
Gotcha.
And he just basically talks about, look, if you're a libertarian, I always call myself a libertarian. Then you realize how much government actually does. Like the Department of Agriculture that shoots off like fireworks to keep geese out of the airfield. They keep falcons. Just the Department of Energy getting sheep to graze at higher altitudes because of global warming. There's a lot of shit that we don't realize. Or the Tesla I drive was made possible by ARPA, which is low interest loans. There's a lot of shit that we all kind of rely on. Who keeps track of all the uranium rods and all those diagnostic machines in hospitals? If you don't like dirty bombs, you might want somebody.
Yeah, I can guarantee it's not Tesla.
It's definitely not. There is long-term research that private enterprise is not going to be involved in because they don't see a fast enough return. So that is where you have DARPA. That is where you have GPS. That's what GPS came out of. That's what Velcro came out of. That's where Kevlar vest came out of. That's where, blah, blah, blah. So it was a real eye-opener for me. Who manages the electric grid? Who makes sure that all that nuclear waste that's buried in the ground doesn't seep into the Columbia River, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, it was like, oh, fine. Geez, I talk a lot of shit, and I really haven't done any research. You read a book sometimes, and you're like, oh, look, Bryan Callen doesn't know a goddamn thing, which is how I feel when I talk to you. So, but, it's good to be humbled. So talk to me about what is going on in Argentina. Is this good? Is this bad? We don't know yet.
Let's put that on the to be determined. Milei, the new president, has no experience in government that matters. Excuse me. I had COVID and then I had a cold, so I'm still
going around.
Yeah. He'll probably not be getting rid of the central bank after all, because that, among other things, regulates banks, which is a relevant thing. But he's absolutely right that the situation in Argentina is awful, and it is the fault of the Peronists, and this is because of decades of deliberate mismanagement, and things will get worse before they get better. That doesn't mean I think he can fix it. That means I don't know. I wish him well. But oh my God, what I can tell you is that Argentina has an excellent agricultural system, a pretty good infrastructure system, great naturally navigable waterways, an excellent educational system, and arguably the healthiest demographic structure on the planet.
Wow.
So the bones are good. You just need a government that is not dedicated to destroying them. So even if he ends up being a D-grade president, it's an improvement.
Well, so when you say the Peronists were socialists, basically, is that what they were?
No, they're basically take the most destructive and economically nonsensical aspects of socialism and fascism and put them together. That's Peronism.
Wow. Yeah. Time to go, guys. Time to go.
Now, this is not the first time a non-Peronist has won the presidency, and his party is the third largest in parliament. So he's got his work cut out for him no matter how this goes.
Because he's still up against the Peronists. He's still up against
the Peronists are the largest party in parliament.
Amazing. And they justify their actions how? I mean, like, hey, guys, look at how it's been going,
Well, the whole idea of Peronism is that the government is the representative of the people, socialism, and the determining factor in the economy, fascism. And so there are unions which the government runs, and the government has the right to intervene in any part of the economy at any time in order to recreate resources. And one of the ways that they've kind of patched that all together and made that nonsense work is to just print currency like mad. So they also have hyperinflation.
That sounds like America, dude.
Yeah, but this, I always like to use Argentina as a cautionary tale for the United States. It's like, if you get up every day and commit yourself to making your situation worse, after 9 decades, you can eventually get past your natural gifts and your demographic gifts and ruin it. But it takes a dedication that I have never seen out of American politicians.
Yeah, of course not. Yeah, I mean, now you are rewarded if you can amplify your monologue, and being grounded in truth is of of minor importance, of
Yeah.
vanishing importance.
Probably put it the best way. If you combine Trump's effort to build a cult of personality with AOC's idea of modern monetary theory, you put that together, that would be probably the closest thing to Peronism that we could come up with.
Yeah, it's called suicide.
Yeah, it's not a good idea.
With immigration trends the way they are, especially in Europe, is this creating is this the reason we're getting these nationalists in?
It's a big part of it.
Poland and Holland.
Yeah, remember, we've got a couple of things going on in Europe that are happening here too. The population is aging very quickly, and most of the countries in Europe have aged past the point of no return. So they're on a long-term path towards national dissolution because they just stopped having kids. That's in Germany, that's in Spain, that's in Poland, that's in Italy, that's in the Netherlands. Second, globalization is dying, and the European economy was founded on the idea that we can all get along, and that means Europe can export anywhere. That's no longer the case. Throw in the Chinese product dumping to make it worse. So they need a new economic and social model anyway. And at the time that their population is aging out and they're desperate for labor, you have migrants on their southern and eastern borders wanting to come in. Those migrants are, for the most part, un or low skilled. Now, from a purely economic point of view, it's actually a pretty good match. The Germans, the Italians, the rest, they don't have a lot of young people. So bringing in young, unskilled people to assimilate and to do the work that the Germans can't because they're too skilled, that's actually a pretty good match. But that's not how the Europeans see it, because under globalization, they've gotten more and more specialized, more and more value added, and they just export. Now that that's not an option, they have to do something that's more holistic internally, and that requires a more balanced labor market. Immigration would provide that. But you're talking now about making an economic transformation, and the people who would be responsible for making it work are different color. So you get all of the economic pain, all of the social pain, and more of your electorate are old, and old people, they're crotchety, and they don't want to learn Sudanese. So it's
well, that's what I was going to say. It's, I was just in London and then France, and if you are in the airport of London, seeing an indigenous Londoner, let's just call it a white person with blonde hair and blue, is about as rare as seeing a giraffe. And so you've got, it's primarily a lot of Somali, a lot of Arabic, a lot of Pakistani, a lot of Indian, and it really does look like the United Nations, and it certainly looks a lot.
Remember,
more like,
you're talking about London, which was the capital for centuries of a global imperium, and where people from the colonies came and went all the time. That's not new there. It's really new in a place like Berlin or Rome.
It's new in a place like Berlin and Rome. Okay. Yeah. But you're saying that, because I look at these immigration trends, and you've got people like Douglas Murray who are saying, like, I don't like that they're saying Allahu Akbar on my streets. It's a war cry, and these people don't belong here. And then you've got lots of pro-Hamas, or at least pro-Palestinian demonstrations in these.
Just before you go on, for the record, Allahu Akbar it is a war cry, but it's also the Canadian equivalent of saying tits.
Exactly.
It's like, or our equivalent of doing that.
I'm aware that this is very true. This is very true. But, there seems to be a renewed sense of anxiety, worry, angst over Europe losing its, ready for this, national character, its Christian national character. And this is what you hear a lot. I sympathize with that idea, insofar as, if you look at what made these countries magnets for everyone else, these liberal democracies, you can make the argument that they're the institutions that took centuries to build are there for a reason and should be preserved. That doesn't mean that these countries aren't benefited by controlled immigration. But do you think Europe's like England, Sweden, do you think their immigration policies, Germany, have their immigration policies been irresponsible? Have they been too, quote unquote, liberal, too woke? What is the deal here?
There are some interesting debates going on in Europe about all those topics right now. I think it's important just to understand the scale of what has to happen here if the economist approach to this is going to work. Take Germany, population roughly 85 million. They need 2 million people a year under age 25 for the next 30 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that means that the Germans
to support their economy.
Yeah, just
2 million people a year.
Just to hold where they are now.
But they're at zero population growth, aren't they?
They've been at below zero for some time. So for this to work, there aren't any Germans left in Germany. And so people who say that immigration is the solution, like, it can be a patch, it can be part of a broader approach. But if that is your solution, your countries won't exist in 30 years. And I hate to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but that's just math. The solution is to encourage your own people to have more kids. And that means relatively pro-natalist policies like you see out of places like France or Sweden, where it's easier to have a family. But there is no way you do that without a much higher tax base.
It's
expensive.
Yeah.
And so we're going to have to, all of us are going to have to do things that we don't like to do. We're going to have to make some hard choices. Canada has proven that you can make immigration alone its solution. But Canada is a very, very special place with a unique political identity. I don't think that's replicable. Inward migration to Canada on a per capita basis is triple that of the country in second place. I don't think anyone else can follow Canada on that path. We have to find another way.
Right, because if you're going to bring in 2 million people a year who are obviously from other countries, primarily Muslim countries, for example, then these people bring their customs with them. They bring their culture with them. And your idea of an English culture is obviously going to go by the wayside because
England is they're not a settler state, but they were functionally in the same basket. If you're talking about the settler states, New Zealand, Australia, the United States, Canada, and to a lesser degree, the United Kingdom and Argentina, we have a much more fluid definition of citizenship. And so we can bring in a higher percentage. Where that number is, of course, is subject to much debate, but we can do it and sustain it much more than the nation states of Europe who are ethnically defined. So Germany has honestly, I think, bent over backwards to try to loosen the definition of German, but just the scale of the problem, the shortcomings in numbers are so huge that it's just not enough. In Italy, they haven't even tried. When you immigrate to Italy, you're pretty much living in a ghetto. Poland's even worse. Here, however, you know how when you fill out a form that asks you your race and your ethnicity?
Yeah.
And how if you mark the first one white, and then down below the subcategory for white Caucasian is Hispanic or non-Hispanic?
Yeah.
The reason for that is that Mexican Americans specifically, usually by the second generation, define themselves as gringo. They define themselves as white, regardless of what their skin looks like.
Sure. Because
they see it as a cultural term that means we are part of the ruling class. It's something to aspire to. And for the most part, American culture agrees with that. One of the great things that I think Donald Trump did on race relations, of all things, is to convince the American hard right that the Mexicans are part of the club. That was a huge achievement. The racial
talk about the wall and all that stuff.
Exactly. Just because what he discovered is something the Democrats haven't learned, is that the only group that's more opposed to inward migration to the United States than the labor unions are existing Mexican Americans. Yeah. He figured that out. They haven't.
They're also trending more conservative, aren't they? They're
socially, they are definitely more conservative than the American norm. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you don't have that sort of differentiation and identity in Europe. It's much more monochromatic, and that makes immigration a hard sell.